Okay, you guys, so the AP exam is tomorrow for those of you who are taking it in person. So here's what you gotta know. So first thing for the multiple choice, you just have to know the content. And if you don't know it by now, it's just too late. But I hope you do. I hope you know enough to answer. And so we can kind of do a practice question here. So if we look at this multiple choice, we'll go ahead and time ourselves. We'll start at 12:05:40 and start. Okay, so as you see, first thing you want to do is read the question. So we're going to say, the events described in the passage are reaction against which of the following forms of coerced labor? Okay, so before you even read the passage, let's look. First, it's Jean Froissart. We don't know who that is. French chronicler. Okay, so they're in Europe in the late 1300s. So think about what's happening in the 1300s. Well, that's in period 1, 1200 to 1450. That's feudalism. So that's kings and queens, that's lords and serfs, it's manors and peasants. So we can already cross out slavery because it's in Europe. There wasn't slavery in Europe at this time. We can cross out indentured servitude because that was more of a period period 2, unit 4 type thing. Uh, Now we're on military conscription serfdom. Now, really, the medieval period was all about serfdom. But let's go ahead and scan this passage. Don't read it, just scan it. So you can say England was nearly ruined, blah blah blah, customary England, other county or other countries, nobility. Okay, so it's starting to sound like feudalism. Privileges over the commoners, bound by law to bound by law and custom to plow the lands of the nobles, harvest the grain, carry to the barn, and perform various services for their lords. So this is going to be serfdom because they're talking about the manor system. So let's see, how long did that take? Look at that. So as me explaining it, it took a little bit over a minute, but you can do this in under a minute. Okay, next question. English nobles resisted peasants' demands, such as those described in the passage, because agricultural labor in many parts of the 14th century Afro-Eurasia had become scarce as a result of which of the following developments, okay? So let's think. Let's read these answers. Migration of peasants to cities in search of industrial employment. No, the Industrial Revolution didn't happen until the 1700s. Significant increase in mortality due to the spread of epidemic diseases. Maybe. Gotta think about the Mongols, that Black Plague. The development of wage-based economies with the emergence of capitalism. No, we're still in feudalism. We're not even in mercantilism here. And D, the widespread famine resulting in a rise in global temperatures. Well, no, this period is called the Little Ice Age, so definitely not D. So the answer has to be B because of the Black Plague. And finally, the last question in this section, all of the following statements are factually accurate. Which of the following most likely explains Froissart's view on the peasants' grievances discussed in the passage? So let's look through. Froissart was talking about how the peasants, he doesn't really care about the peasants, they need to just do the work. So we can read, even though he was French, Froissart traveled to England to collect information for his chronicles. Maybe he did travel to England, but I doubt it. That doesn't, it's not really a good answer. Peasants' revolts were fairly common in medieval Europe. Well, that's a good answer, because they were very common, so let's keep that one marked. History writing in medieval Europe was aimed primarily at elite audiences. Well, yeah, probably. This is before the invention of the printing press, so the peasants couldn't even read. So this is really mainly geared towards the nobles. So maybe he's, writing to his base. And in addition to his chronicles, he wrote a romance book similar to King Dark. That has nothing to do with the question. So it's between B and C. And if we go back up, we can see he's not exactly talking about B. He's not exactly talking about peasant revolts all across Europe, just in England. Um, he's really talking about how the lords are right. They're saying the evil disposed in this district began to rise, saying they were too severely depressed. And he's comparing the peasants to devils, as Lucifer had done against God. But they had no such thing, but they were men formed after the same likeness as their lords, who treated them like beasts. They could no longer bear this, and they wanted to be free. And if they were to do any work for their lords, they demanded to be paid for it. So we can see here, he's kind of taking the side of the lords, he's pandering to them, so he's writing for the lords. That one's a little bit harder because of B is their distractor there. Okay. So that's multiple choice, not too hard. Just cross out, there's always going to be two answers that are wrong, just flat out wrong. So cross those out in the beginning, and then even if you're guessing between those other two answers, that's a 50% chance you get every question right. If you just guessed, that's 25 right off the 25. I don't know how many questions we're answering, whatever. Like half of them right off the bat. That's not bad. Add in some of your knowledge, you should be able to define a multiple choice. Okay, SAQs. Go fast, but not that fast. SAQs are really simple. Just first sentence, make your claim and answer the question. Second sentence, explain what you mean and add in a little bit more information. Third sentence or fourth sentence, add in some outside evidence and relate all of it back to the prompt. And they're going to be on anything. So if you're online, just hope you know it, because you're really not going to have enough time to Google for this stuff. And if you're in person, choose the SAQs which you know the best. Or if they have a stimulus, like a picture or a graph or a paragraph, pick that one if you can, figure out what's going on in that graph. Okay, LEQs and kind of TPQs as well. So focus on the introduction, getting good points in the body paragraphs, right? So you can already get 2 points from just doing a thesis and contextualization. So that's 2 points right off the bat that you can get. Then you can get the other some more points from just A, stating evidence or describing documents if you're doing a DBQ, and then B, relating it back to your prompt or sourcing in a DBQ, right? So that's already like what, half your points. Then if you're able, don't ever go for the complexity point, just don't ever do it. Restate your thesis at the end and make sure you have a date in your thesis, because if you don't, it's not going to be specific enough. And make sure your thesis is specific, right? Use this format here from blank time period, despite the fact that if you're going for the complexity point, you need to do the counter argument, but you need to put it in all of your paragraphs, right? Not just your last one in all of them. But I'm going to do it. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. You can get a 5 without it. Most people do. Only 2% of people get the complexity point. So from time period, despite the fact that the blank, what did they do? So, the Chinese Communist Party helped the peasants as seen by X and Y, right? So you want to be specific here. Don't say something general. Be specific. So if we're talking about states industrializing in the 20th century, you can say during the 20th century, states increased control over their economy as seen by Soviet central planning and Keynesian economics, right? So you want to be specific. That way they know what you're going to be talking about in your body paragraphs. Okay. Same thing with the DBQ. You want to be specific and relate it to the document. Please read the documents before you write your thesis, before you write anything. Read your documents and, know what you're talking about, right? DBQs are surrounded by the document. So if you don't know the document, you don't know what you're doing. Okay. Those are just the quick tips. Next, I'm gonna write the assignment.